Hey guys, so this is like my 100th video, so I decided to make a tier list for the first 10 volumes of my comic, Imaginatives. And I've had this video in the works for a little bit, but the old version, the script ran for a little bit too long and it gave too much information, so it was like 22 minutes long. So I decided to scrap that because I didn't want to do all that editing, and I'm just gonna do a simple tier list in this style. I also got a new headset that sounds really clear, and I just wanted to test it out, and also a new recorder that I have, which should be clearer. And so, since I'm going to be ranking these, I'm going to be ranking them based on how I felt upon rereading them, because I feel like that's the most important thing, because I think it kind of just ties in to like my experience overall, and how I got from Volume 1 to Volume 10 and how I improved and stuff like that. And so, I'm going to be rating this in terms of average, good, great, and then I'm going to say which one I thought was the best. And so the first book in the series was The New Guys, and since this was the first book of the series, to say it was lacking in some areas would be a little bit of an understatement. I remember being excited about it, like the first time when I made it, since it was like my first original series, but I don't think the fact that I was like a beginner kind of outweighs the flaws, because there are a lot of flaws in this one. Like the panel borders were way too thin, the colors are way too saturated, the lines are like cringy and outdated, a lot of random humor, and I had no experience with word bubbles and where to place them. Kind of unreadable sometimes. I actually wanted to end up skimming the first half of the volume, but I got a little more invested as it progressed. But honestly, it's not great. It's not good. And although this is the first one and I thought I should cut it some slack, maybe put an average, it really is just kind of sucks. And so the second book of the series was Old Dogs, and I think I improved a lot with this one, like at least a little bit. The book relied less on humor, and so there was a lot less like room for cringe and stuff like that. It relied more on explaining backstories and introducing characters. This one also had less intense colors and toned down most of the saturation for the new places and objects. Although it was shorter than the first, I was a lot more invested in this one than I was with the first one. This volume also introduced one of my favorite character designs and names, which is Stellus. I also thought that the relationship between Maria and Excalibur was better than I remembered, and how Squeaky had a genuinely good moment in the story. There were a few places that needed a dialogue tweak, especially in one area which you could probably point out if you read it, but I enjoyed like a lot of that, so I'm putting it into And so the third volume of the series was Masked Familiars, and I already didn't have good feelings going into this one, just because of what I remember from it. This is kind of the volume where the main plot of the series kind of kicks in though and becomes more prominent. I've already started to wonder when I'll get the hang of speech bubbles, because it's still unreadable sometimes. Although I was planning on putting this one in the very bottom already, because of it had like a mystery thing going on, but there was like a lack of well-built tension. It wasn't as bad as I remember it being, but although it introduced one of my favorite characters, Alex, I think the mystery and build-up could have been done a lot better. The only reason it took me longer to read this one was because it was a lot wordier than the first two, and I thought the setup at the end for what's to come was pretty alright, and I thought I could use that as like an excuse, like, oh, it's not the mystery of who Alex is, it's what he knows, but really that doesn't excuse the poorly built mystery. And there's nothing really remarkable in this one, so I'm just gonna put in So the fourth one was Reboot, and I didn't know how to think about this one either when I looked back on it, but after rereading it, I thought it was pretty alright. This was also a collab volume. There was a lot more humor in this one, and because of that, I was a bit more wary of its presence. But it went by pretty fast. A huge part of the story was basically useless and could have been taken out. And the defeat of Zetas was also pretty rushed and anticlimactic, but upon reread, it made me more confident that me and my friends had some kind of importance in the grand scheme of things. I also had fond memories of writing Zetas, also known as Mushy, and I liked his comedic yet threatening attitude, which is why I like to think of him as one of the better written villains. But overall, like, it's not too bad where I put it in so I'm just gonna put it in average, because it's not bad, but it's not really great either. So yeah. The fifth volume was Sleeping Terror, and I didn't have too many memories of this one. All of the different dream sequences in this and all the different locations are actually from my own dreams, and I wish I could have included more of them, but I decided to cut a lot of the dream sequences because I didn't want to drag the story on, because then it'd just be like one long chase. At first I didn't know what to expect, but I actually ended up liking this one a lot. I thought the dream sequences were going to be a drag, but I think the changes in scenery and the different characters being introduced kept my interest up. I also actually felt emotional at the end of this one, which was unexpected. I guess when I was writing it, I didn't really think about it. Plus, loss is kind of like a touchy subject right now, and so I just decided to put it in great, because kind of tugged on my heartstrings. I like the change of scenery, and yeah, I just think that one's a fun read overall. And so the sixth one was Anthro's Gumwild, and this one was a bit more wordy than the last few, but we'll get to that later. I really don't have much to say for this one other than it was an okay read. Another one of my favorite characters was introduced in this one, that being Larry. I like his role in the story as well as Stellis's. I wish I could have expanded more on Skylar and Scott's side plot, but I think I can fit more stuff in with them in the future. But I think I showed a little bit too much in Alex and Predra's conversation at the time. I thought the show don't tell thing applied to the sort of backstory explaining, but I think it would have been better if I just showed the characters talking and kept the secrets about their homeworld a secret. The speech bubbles were hard to read and lengthy at times, but I did enjoy the dialogue and fight scenes in some areas. Although I didn't have any problems reading with this one, I'd say it was pretty average upon reread, considering there could have been more B-plot. So, why the heck does it keep doing that? So, the seventh one was Skeletons in the Past, and I was pretty shocked when I reread this one. I remember I enjoyed the fight towards the end, but I forgot how much tension and drama I actually built up in this one. When rereading it, I felt more emotional during the scenes where the gang was fighting amongst each other. I think this was around the time I also started experimenting with more lighting, specifically in the moments towards the end. The beginning could have led into the story a lot better though, since to me it felt like the story was going in a completely different direction at the beginning. This was a fun read overall, and I liked reading this one all the way through, so I'm gonna put that in great. Imaginatives 8 is the good guy, and although I wasn't as invested in reading this one as I was with the last one, I still thought it held up pretty well, especially the ending. In this volume, I remember I started experimenting with lighting as well as thicker borders for my pages, which is a big plus on the aesthetic side. Looking back on this volume, I wish I could have done more with how the others were affected by the events of the last volume, even if those effects weren't as drastic as Prejudice's or Toon's. Some of the lines were Some of the lines were oddly repetitive for some reason. Changing up some of the words and lines could have helped, looking back on it. I was tempted to put this in average, but I think there's some things in this that kind of put it a little bit more above average, so I'm just gonna put it in good. The 9th one was Canine Cannibal. I already had fond rereadings of this one, and although Mass Familiars was kind of a mystery story, I think this volume was where I truly embraced the crime and mystery aspect. I like the darker feel of this one and the violence. The gore also never seemed out of place, and the humor was just in the right places where it didn't completely offset the dark tone of the story. This is one of the volumes that I never get tired of rereading, and I think this is one of the volumes where my best effort was shown, and so for that I think it deserves to be put in great. And finally, the 10th volume, which was Culture Fair. I know I only finished this one, now it's been a few months, but I had no idea how to feel about it going into the story. Seeing how it wasn't so much about the ongoing plot and more about thanking the readers and giving them fan service, I wasn't sure how to feel about it going in. The length also made it iffy for me since this was the longest volume I've ever done, almost reaching 500 pages, but surprisingly I had a lot of fun with it. Although the location stayed relatively samey looking, I didn't get tired of the background, and although the cast of characters was wider this time, I didn't feel like any of them didn't serve a purpose. I feel like they all kind of had their little spot in the story. I was kind of nervous about the quality, but after rereading it, I can say I thoroughly enjoyed this one. So I'm just gonna put it in great. And for the overall best volume, I chose Canine Cannibal, and that's because I think it's like the most well-structured and best written story. I can see where the story is going basically, but at the same time I feel like it doesn't give too much away and kind of gives a lot to readers who are more observant. And I feel this is the volume where the characters and mood are very consistent, and it rewards those readers who pay attention for looking at clues and stuff like that. The scenery changes a lot, and as well as the lighting. I played with those a lot, and it made the scenes look a lot more interesting, and it made it feel unique and not samey. I'm really proud of this one looking back on it, and I hope that people who read this one or decide to read it feel the same way. So I'm gonna move that into best. And so that's my tier list. I had a fun time rereading my series. Although there were some moments where I cringed at the line delivery of the dialogue, I can see a very clear improvement from the first one all the way to the 10th one. And I have a good idea of where I want the comic to go in the future, and I hope I can keep it going for as long as I can. If you haven't read it yet, any new readers are highly appreciated. But for those who are familiar with the series, what did you guys think? Were there things that you caught that I could have missed? Do you have a certain volume in particular that stands out to you? Where would you rank each volume? If you have any criticisms, comments, or questions, I'll be happy to answer them in the comment section below. And that's all the time I have. It's late. My throat's dry. Bye.